Hello, I'm Bruce Roberts. I recently joined FAIR as Research Strategy and Innovation Officer. I hope you're enjoying the FAIR 2020 Research Retreat. In the preceding sessions, you've heard from leading food allergy experts on the development, treatment, and prevention of food allergy, which affects some 32 million Americans and an estimated 190 million individuals worldwide. In the next session, we will describe FAIR's role in promoting food allergy clinical research and translational medicine. FAIR has established foundational research platforms that enable clinicians and scientists to collaborate and access food allergy-related data to advance clinical research and promote the development of new therapies and diagnostics. Those platform capabilities are depicted below. A patient registry to gather self-reported outcome information, a clinical trial network, and finally the FAIR Biobank. And these operate together in order to enable us to monitor the patient journey as well as to advance new therapeutic agents and promote work in the development of diagnostics and biomarkers. Now, the clinical value proposition is shown here. So by virtue of the fact of having these core competencies, FAIR is in a position to support activities as they relate to planning, execution, and evaluation with clinical studies. To be more specific, at the planning stage, FAIR can support standardized procedure development, protocol development support, employ centralized IRB processes and regulatory support, and engage in budget as well as contractual negotiation support in the planning stage. In terms of the execution of clinical studies, by virtue of the fact that we can leverage the clinical trial network, we have access to premier clinical sites, access to specific patient cohorts, and an ability to monitor and maintain investigational product. And finally, in the evaluation stage, we have the ability to manage biospecimen maintenance and collation, biomarker data, access to sample analysis, and finally access to patient outcome data. So we built these internal capabilities to support our ability to foster the development of clinical development activities developed by specific investigators within the network, but also to support specific initiatives that FAIR is championing. And those are depicted in this slide. And they consist of the following. First of all, for those individuals who have pre-existing food allergies, we're promoting strategies for long-term desensitization to multiple allergens. The second major initiative is for those individuals who are at risk of developing food allergy, is to promote therapies that would block the development of such food allergies, so therapeutic intervention approaches. With respect to assays and diagnostics and biomarkers, currently there's a paucity of tools that enable us to monitor and diagnose patients. And so this is a major area of focus for FAIR as well. And finally, with respect to understanding disease biology, there's so much that needs to be understood with respect to the development and the progression of food allergy. So this is the fourth key initiative for FAIR. Now, those four activities are actually plotted out over the course of the next couple of slides. So the top bar actually shows the patient journey, and investigators at this particular meeting have elaborated on the processes that lead to the development of food allergy, of which there are a number of contributing factors, including diet, the microbiome, genetics, and environmental factors. But after an individual has experienced an adverse event, often there's a diagnosis, and that may then lead to an understanding that that individual has a particular food allergy. Based on that understanding, recommendations will be made with respect to which particular treatment options may be most appropriate for that patient. And finally, it is hopeful that essentially that we're able to create long-term benefit for those individuals and seek resolution of disease. And that would be the final outcome here. So our number one priority right now is in terms of trying to attain durable desensitization for individuals who have food allergies. And many of the therapies that exist today provide some level of desensitization, but much can be done in terms of enhancing the durability of that response. The second main priority relates to prevention. So this would basically be an intervention in at-risk individuals to prevent the development of food allergy in the first instance. The third main priority is with respect to diagnostics and biomarkers. And in this regard, we're looking to promote new and innovative approaches to diagnose disease, which I will describe momentarily. And the fourth main priority for FAIR is in the area of understanding disease biology, as much needs to be understood. So for instance, right now, we don't know why individuals display food allergies to particular food allergens, but not to others. We also don't know the basis for the development of food allergy in children versus what may happen in adults. And so this is a fundamental gap that we have in terms of knowledge. Now, importantly, goals 3 and 4 support all the things that we're doing above it. So understanding aspects of monitoring disease and disease biology support goals 1 and 2 in terms of attaining durable desensitization and preventing the development of disease in the first instance. In the next few slides, I will be elaborating on some specific initiatives that FAIR is supporting that pertain to each one of these 4 key objectives. In the area of durable desensitization, I'm going to now describe the combined study. The combined study is a first of its kind clinical trial to be done in conjunction with investigators, Dr. Carrie Nadeau, at Stanford University. It is a multi-allergen study using 2 biologics, alone or in concert in combination with multiple OIT. And the objective is to assess the durability of desensitization of patients. With respect to the second major goal, the example I'd like to cite now is the SEED study, a study that's designed to prevent the development of food allergies in infants. So SEED stands for Start Eating Early Diet. And there are 4 components to this study. It's coordinated elements that will potentially reduce the growth of potentially life-threatening food allergies among infants and young children. And those 4 key components are displayed below. First of all, with respect to education, FAIR is leading a campaign which will leverage evidence-based and patient-centered insights that will help us to understand the early introduction of foods and the feasibility for all patients. With respect to awareness, this is a pediatrician-directed campaign emphasizing integration of early introduction of foods and allergy prevention best practices into patient care for all patients as standard of care. And with respect to advocacy, FAIR will be leading a key initiative promoting the inclusion of multi-allergen early introduction into the 2025 U.S. Dietary Guidelines based on the findings which will emerge from the SEED study. And the 4th component is, of course, a clinical study, which I shall elaborate on in the next slide. Now, the clinical study itself is divided into 2 components. During stage 1, interviews and surveys will be conducted to understand perceptions concerning early allergenic food introduction and to assess infant feeding practices. The information from stage 1 will then be utilized in order to help design the stage 2, which is a randomized controlled study comparing early introduction of multiple potentially allergenic foods versus standard care in a large, diverse patient population of infants. And the overall intent here is to assess allergen-related data for early introduction group as compared to standard care on a longitudinal basis following children out to age 3. Moving now to the area of diagnostics and biomarkers, the key initiative that I wish to talk about now is FAITH, which is an ambitious program designed to replace the oral food challenge. FAITH stands for Food Allergy Identifier, Testing Humanely. It is a multi-million-dollar competition supported by FAIR to promote the development of a diagnostic test or tests for food allergy. It will attract the best minds to develop innovative technologies that will lead to a simple point-of-care test. Now, investigators participating in the FAITH initiative will be offered the opportunity to prove their concept. And those that are able to move their concept forward will have the opportunity to receive additional support from FAIR as they advance their product concept for the replacement of the oral food challenge. Now, the overall strategy of this multi-year program is depicted in this slide. From the outset, we will apply a multi-pronged approach with simultaneous pursuit of several options. And that is because today there's no universal consensus opinion in terms of which assay is most likely to be a replacement for the oral food challenge. So right from the outset, we'll do a comparison, head-to-head comparison, of the various assays that have some level of clinical validation to arrive at the promising lead assays. This will be a collaborative pursuit involving investigators at multiple sites. And FAIR will be applying a staged investment model with future support contingent upon demonstration of progress. And throughout this entire process, there will be a comparison with matched oral food challenge data, because this is currently the gold standard for the assessment of food allergy in patients. So the first step in the process is an exploration stage, and that will involve a head-to-head comparison of a handful of assays for which there's some level of clinical validation. The competition will be open to individual principal investigators and consortia consisting of investigators in academia and also investigators in industry. Following the first phase of the exploration of these assays, FAIR will be providing an incentive award to the group or groups which achieve a first milestone, that being a candidate assay or assays demonstrating strong potential utility for the diagnosis of food allergy. The financial award that's given at the end of the exploration stage will be used to support further advancement and investment in those most promising assays. And that will then be the assessment stage. During this phase, the approaches that have been identified previously will be pressure tested at multiple clinical sites using standardized methods and a diverse collection of patient samples. And the intention will be to confirm the clinical utility of the most promising assays identified previously during the exploration phase. There will be an emphasis on demonstrating robustness, high specificity and selectivity, and reproducibility. And at the end of the assessment stage, there will be a second incentive award provided by FAIR to groups that have basically identified a candidate assay demonstrating strong potential utility for diagnosis of food allergy, and also importantly, a robust plan for clinical validation. And the third stage involves validation. And here, resources will be focused on the most promising assays that have emerged from the assessment stage. At this point, we'll be pressure testing specific number of assays at an expanded number of sites using universal SOPs, diverse collection of patient samples, and the analysis will be done on a blinded basis. We'll be establishing performance specifications and, importantly, determining criteria for the interpretation of assay results. So the findings are clear to allergists, to patients and families, and also to the individuals who are interpreting the observations. Overall, at this stage, there will be a head-to-head comparison with the results of an oral food challenge outcome, as this is the gold standard. And importantly, at this stage, we'll be looking for partners and individuals that will be available to work with FAIR on the future development of the assay and dissemination of it. So further information on the FAITH initiative will be provided shortly. So finally, with respect to the disease biology, the specific example I wish to showcase today is the FASI-FAIR collaboration. Data that has emerged from the FASI group of investigators has demonstrated that there's a complex interplay of the enteric nervous system with the immune system in the gut in response to sensing food antigens, and this sends signals to the brain. Subsequently, there's a transmission of signals from the brain to the gut, and it can result in the host of a number of different issues, including altered pain pathways and dysmotility. So the initiative in which FAIR is now supporting investigators at FASI will expand FAIR's research into the disease biology to uncover the interplay of the enteric gut nervous system and the immune system, and the response in sensing food antigens and signaling to the brain. And we're committed to understanding disease-associated pathways and finding new targets, which can then potentially afford us the opportunity to launch new drug discovery campaigns. And this potentially creates a great opportunity for future therapeutics, which could be used to treat disease and potentially also maybe even prevent disease as well, understanding how we can intervene in these pathways. Several of the FASI investigators who are participating in this initiative are shown here on the right-hand side. And it's my pleasure to inform you that we have presentations from Dr. Medzitov as well as Dr. Kushero at this research retreat. So I refer you to their particular presentations for more information. So what we will hear in the research retreat and in the ensuing series of presentations is additional elaboration on FAIR's newfound capabilities in the platform capability. And those include the FCN Clinical Trial Network, our patient registry and data commons, and finally, you'll hear from Dr. Amal Assad from Cincinnati Children's Hospital with respect to the FAIR Biobank and biomarker research. During the course of today's presentation, I've told you about a couple of different initiatives where FAIR is providing sponsorship for specific activities. And I refer you to the presentations in this meeting given by the investigators below that will give you additional information that pertains to these specific initiatives. For instance, Dr. Gupta has provided a presentation on the SEED study. Drs. Kim and Nadu have talked about treatment studies supported by FAIR. As I mentioned previously, Dr. Medzitov and Kusha will be providing background information on the FASI collaboration. There are several presentations that are based on findings from the patient registry. And finally, I want to note that FAIR has traditionally supported specific research investigators, and we'll be hearing from two of those investigators who've received career awards and learn from their specific research activities. Now, in addition to this, the research efforts within FAIR are designed to provide publications for education purposes. And I want to bring to your attention two such prominent publications which have recently emerged. One is a primer on food allergy, which is appearing in the Journal of Food Allergy, and many of these chapters are written by FAIR Clinical Trial Network investigators. The other noteworthy publication is a consensus report which emerged from a 2019 Oral Immunotherapy Summit, which FAIR conducted last year. Now, importantly, in everything that FAIR does, we need to be cognizant of aspects related to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access in all of our research activities. And our intent here overall is supporting access for care to communities. And there's really three aspects related to this, which are leadership, the voice of the patient, and access. This slide basically depicts some key initiatives that FAIR has launched in this regard. And I want to bring your attention to a few of these. Some of them will also be presented and elaborated upon at the summit meeting, which will be scheduled for October. With respect to leadership, FAIR is launching a diversity fellowship program. This is to provide support for public health individuals to understand the patient journey for populations of diverse populations who are seeking access to care. We're also creating a diversity advisory board to help us think about the various strategies that we're developing and implementing new therapeutic avenues and ensure that those approaches are accessible to all. With respect to the voice of the patient, I've described the SEED study, but there's also those activities that relate to gathering information that relate to the patient journey. And this is part of the patient registry, and you'll be hearing more from this in additional talks in this presentation. And finally, with respect to access to care, the clinical trial network itself is a way for us to reach out to larger community populations and ensure that the therapies that we're developing are broadly accessible to all patients. So just in closing, I'd like to summarize the 2020 research objectives, which are shown here. And on the left-hand side, they relate to the platform capabilities that we now have established. Key objectives include launching the clinical trial network, expanding our patient registry, publishing the registry findings based on the information we already have right now, and developing strategies for integration of self-reported outcome information as well as EMR data. And finally, an important aspect is building partnerships with academia, but also with industry. With respect to applied research objectives, key objectives for the remainder of the year are launching the FAITH initiative, launching biomarker research initiatives, one of which will be done in conjunction with Janssen, leveraging our FCN2 capabilities to conduct clinical studies, and finally completing the survey which will set the stage for the phase 2 study, which is going to be conducted and commenced in 2021. So I hope you enjoyed the additional presentations in this particular session, which is devoted to describing FAIR's clinical research capabilities. And I thank you for joining us for the FAIR 2020 Research Retreat.